Okay. Who's
Here
the
we
first
go.
in? Michael Hawley was the first one in, at least the first one coming through. So we got Arlene, Francine, Henry, John, Colleen. Nice. All right. Sure there's going to be more and more folks coming along. How you doing, Mr. St. Clair?
I'm doing very well. It's Thursday. It's almost Friday.
That's right. That's a good way. Do me a favor, turn your camera a little bit towards your left so we can see that whole Halo Sill International.
Oh, yes.
There you go. Make sure we get you properly positioned. So, all right. And you got, where are you based, David?
We're just outside of Wilmington, Delaware.
Wilmington, Delaware. Right. We're just outside of DC and Maryland. So if you want to pipe in, Arlene and Amanda and everybody else, you want to let us know where you're coming from. I have my, for all the folks from NASA, I need my space mug. But we're coming to you from Maryland and Delaware area. So where are you guys from? You can pop it in there and let us know, put it in the chat where you are hailing from. And we'll be able to welcome everybody as needed. That's me. Jacksonville, Florida. Bryce. Very nice. One of my favorite places. Lived in Ponte Vedra for 2.5 years. Love Jacksonville. Porterville, California. I don't even know where that is. St. Thomas. Yeah, now we're all jealous. St. Thomas. We got Parkersburg, West Virginia, Illinois, Iowa. Heaven. Did you get to see the Field of Dreams? Did you see what God did last Thursday?
No.
Oh my God.
No, I'm still stuck on St. Thomas since I grew up.
Well,
we didn't hear you.
What's that?
We didn't hear where you grew up, David.
Where did you grow up, David?
St. John in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, I didn't know
to
that.
St. Thomas.
That's awesome. Oh, I'm jealous of you too. So, but if you didn't get to see it, they did the baseball game at Field of Dreams between the White Sox and the Yankees. So it was a legit major league game, and Cosner came out, and they come out through the corn. We went out there 4 years ago before they built this new park, and I was not for it at first, but then I saw this. It was like, it's magical. Anyway, from Iowa, Albuquerque, New Mexico. I love that. So my question, who is that put that in there? Is that Andre? Who is that? Yeah, Andre. Red or green, Andre? That's the question. Kansas City, Missouri. Paoli, Indiana. All right. Porterville, 45 minutes north of Bakersfield. Nice. Thank you. Field of Dreams is an awesome moment. It sure was. Sure was, Bryce. Washington, D.C. Christmas. Andre's got Christmas. For those of you who don't know what that means, that if you go to New Mexico, New Mexican food, red or green chili sauce. And there's nothing like it. I love it. Christmas is both together, red and green. So there you have it, folks. That's your lesson in culinary. The culinary lesson. Let's see if we can get this thing working the way it's supposed to. Get my share the screen thing going. All right, fantastic. Well, we're glad that you guys decided to join us for killing pathogens with dry fog disinfection. We're all dealing with the ramifications of something that's happened in the news, something called COVID, I think, David St. Clair. Right?
Yeah, we've all been dealing with that for 18 months now.
God, crazy number, crazy time. So we're all in it together. Mr. St. Clair is the executive chairman for Halo Sill International. They do provide a product that is FDA. Is it, how do you say it? FDA license approved? Is that what
Nope, it's EPA.
EPA. I'm sorry, EPA.
registered.
All right, very good. See, now I'm going to get the education too, along with everybody else here, including everybody else. We want to welcome you folks. We had a lot of folks interested in this. Obviously, trying to reopen things and be safe and make sure that that we have the ability to return to some level of normal and still be safe. And so we want to welcome everybody. Got a bunch of folks in the VA Park Service. I know that you guys have worked with Park Service as well and VA, but we just want to welcome everybody. And we hope that you are going to have a great time. And real quick, the disclaimer is this event is not affiliated or endorsed by any agency. It's provided to you, the audience, for informational purposes only. We get this from GSA, so we can actually say this. All participation is voluntary, and engagement by you is not an indication or endorsement to buy from anybody, including Halo Sil, who is here as a vendor that you're going to get to know a little bit. You don't have to buy from anybody. So that's why we can all talk. Real quick, we're going to get you introduced to David and what his folks do. What are some of the current disinfection recommendations, as well as the methods, right? We'll talk about some case studies and get to your questions and answers and information that you want to have. If you need anything else, we'll make sure you get to where you want to go. If you've been living under a rock and you have no idea that you've ever been on a Zoom call before, this is how it works. You can open up that little doodah at the top, and you can make us bigger or smaller. You can do death by PowerPoint if you want to. That's entirely up to you. You have full control. Session handout today, we have the presidential memoranda, which is the driving force for a lot of these things. We have the briefing presentation, Halo Sil capabilities, and also some checklist or something that is getting populated in the chat right now. There are links that go to these, so you can pull those off of GovBrief. And this will be the best briefing ever. Some of the folks answered this on the way we came in. If Dale from NRC says implementation of the process is clear. Michelle from Treasury says, I learned something new, just one thing. Michelle, just one thing new, David, we got to get her something new. All right, Edwin from the VA is short and to the point. You got it? All right, no ongoing things. Lavette, we get back to normal life. I don't know, Lavette. I don't know if we can get that from a briefing alone, but we will do our break, David. We'll do our best. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a tall order, but we're getting there.
We'll try. We'll do our best. Donna from the VA, it can be helpful for our room disinfection and not too expensive. I think, Donna, we might be able to actually meet that one. All right, so please address. So these are some of the questions that came in, David, so get ready. Earl says cost for equipment and materials and delivery times. We won't get into all the costs, but we will make sure we reach out with you with exactly what you need. Cheryl from SI, that's Smithsonian. All right. Does dry fog disinfection have an adverse effect on sensitive electronic equipment? That's one of the best questions ever. And the answer, David, is?
No.
No.
It does not have adverse effects.
And how about Yuri has this fog product affect paper left on desktops? The answer is?
If used properly, not at all.
There you go. Mara, is it VA approved, and is it being used by any in the VA? You can answer that probably too.
It's being used today by many of the research labs in the VA, a lot of VA veterans' homes and things of that nature. We hope to be in more soon.
There you go. And NRC, Dale from NRC, the purchase method and cost, love that. We'll be able to do that. Henry, residential home disinfection. Can you do that? You just said it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Douglas from DOJ, is fog sanitation necessary if an office space has proper functioning HVAC system with fresh air and MERV 13 filters? I think we'll talk about that as well. And if you would like to participate, you can, because you can chat. You can raise your hand. We already know people can chat because they already told us where they were from. And if you want to pop in the Q&A, and if you have something you want to take offline, send it to info@halosil.com, and they will make sure that they get the answer. Am I right? If they email
Yes,
you,
we can.
there you go. And why are you here today? Are you here because you're a facilities manager? Are you responsible for safety? Are you an HR and interested in a safe workplace? Or do you handle contracts for facilities? Or my boss made me come? We know there's got to be some Weisenheimers out there for that. And while they're answering that, David, let's make sure that if there's anything else that we have to say, I got all that done. And so tell me about you, and tell us about you and Halo Sil and what you have been doing since 2008.
Let me just get this poll down.
Yep.
Yeah, the company was founded in 2008 and spent the first few years getting our EPA registrations because we didn't want to get into any market without proper authorization. We were started here in Delaware. We had a number of EPA registrations before 2013, but the most important one that we're talking about today is we worked with the EPA for about 2 years to help them determine how one should test to prove the effectiveness of an aerosol, of a fog. And we were the first one, therefore, to get the EPA registration in 2013. And we were now able, unlike most others, to be able to make claims like we get a 99.9999% kill of the hardest to kill things, which are spores, bacterial spores. We've obviously also been allowed to deal with emerging pathogens because we're sporicidal, sort of to begin with. We are a small business. Even last year, we're a small business. We did very well last year, as you can imagine. Much better than most people, I suspect. And we're selling now through the GSA, and we've had ECAT pricing for quite some time. So,
well, that's fantastic, and we appreciate that. And you have some pretty significant work that you've done with different agencies. You can see those here with the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, GSA, VA, and the biggest thing that you do is right there. That second bullet is whole room disinfection, right? And that's not just in offices; it can be used in different places, right?
That's correct. It's used in operating room and emergency vehicles and transit systems, in some of the biggest transit systems in the U.S. It's used in a lot of different ways. For the Army, Navy, and Air Force, one of the places they use us is in their athletic facilities to prevent MRSA and other infections for their football players and wrestlers and those sorts of folks.
Oh, nice.
Lots of different uses for this technology that really focus initially on hospitals.
Fantastic. I'm going to share these poll results so you can see. We got facilities folks, we've got folks for safety, HR folks, and folks from facilities. And some of the people are Weisenheimers because we put that in there for the people for the boss may become. So I just want to make sure you saw the kind of audience kind of spread around. So this will be good for everybody. And we do want to know how this impacts you, whether you're facilities or contracting or HR, whatever you do. Let us know how this is affecting your world. So let's talk about whole room disinfection and why anybody should even care.
Well, I think the key to that really is this notion of whole room, that we're able to disinfect all of those surfaces in a room in a single step. You don't have to try to figure out whether or not you remembered to spray and wipe this one or something of that nature. We essentially do it in complex rooms and what we refer to as irregular spaces. There are lots of different ways to apply disinfectants of one sort or another, but very few of them really do the entire room in one shot.
So when you're looking at being able to effectively, because we're going to see how this works, because you actually have a video for this, but it actually does the entire room all at one time, as opposed to having to spray things, right?
That's correct. You have to clean the room first, but you don't have to do any disinfection at all if you don't want. And we essentially take care of everything in that room.
Love it. So this revolves around President's Memorandum M2115. So we have links to this that's provided in the presentation. So if you want this, you can. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is being able to deal with making sure folks are safe in where they're working. And the EPA, as you mentioned, the approved list of N disinfectants, which you are on. That's correct, right?
That's correct. And we're on for essentially all uses of our product.
Right. Fantastic. So you can find that right in the link. If you download the presentation, you can find that link in there and you can check and you can see where Halo Seal falls in there. But this is the real challenge. Take us through the agency challenges and why, and this may be even things that other folks here would like to talk about as well as what their challenges are. But let's talk about the fundamentals.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that workplace safety is on everybody's mind.
Mm-hmm.
I would just like to add that this isn't just about COVID-19. Our products like ours have been used for years trying to keep staff safe. I mean, you think about a hospital, it's not just about the patients, it's about the staff, it's about the visitors and those sorts of folks. Obviously, things like COVID and Ebola all got our attention, the first SARS epidemic. But it really is sort of a day-to-day concern as well. So it's something that we found is relatively easy to implement and helps in lots of different ways. It is moderate cost. One of the questions that we get asked about is sort of how often do we want to do disinfection? And to a great extent, it depends on the nature of the environment you're in and sort of what you see, what you hear from your employees about whether or not people have been sick and things of that nature. One of the keys for us is this notion of maintaining the effectiveness and trying to make sure that every time you disinfect the room, you essentially get the same result.
Yeah, that it actually works.
The methods, right? You want repeatability. Most of the others, you don't have that.
So, and we will be talking specifically about those. And obviously there's a cost associated with it. It really depends on your environment, though. We can certainly figure that out. But so tell us, with your agency challenges, what is most important to you? Is it employee confidence? And you can answer as many as you want on this one. Employee confidence, safety, disinfection actually works, if you can imagine that. And disinfection doesn't ruin my stuff. We had two people that had talked about paper and electronics, very important, and compliance to regulations. So there you go. You guys answer that, and we will start talking about the best practices for a safe work environment while folks are answering that. So you can get rid of that poll so you can actually see it, David.
Thank you.
They're answering.
So this one's a pretty simple one.
Yeah, that's pretty easy.
At this point, I really just try to distinguish between cleaning, which is really removing the raw filth from a room. It's dirt and bodily fluids and things of that nature, depending
Right.
on the situation. Cleaning does, in fact, remove some of the bacteria and viruses and things from surfaces. Sanitizing is the next step, which allows you to say, we have reduced it by a significant amount. But sanitizing isn't disinfection.
Sure.
Disinfection, as defined by the EPA, is at least sort of a 99.99% kill or deactivation of pathogens on surfaces. So sanitizing is something less than that.
Right. And so we'll take you through the different methodologies, and most of these are not, this isn't rocket science, right, David? I mean, people are doing these things every day.
That's right. I mean, if you think about spray and wipe, and more recently wipes, but spray and wipe has been used essentially since the Civil War, and not much about the process has changed. Obviously, the effectiveness of the disinfectants has changed and the speed in which they can kill pathogens, but the process is just the same. And it's often used in occupied rooms. The nice thing is relatively little training is required. It's not a very expensive process. And the scrubbing action, just like cleaning, does in fact help remove more and more of the pathogens.
Yeah, sure.
Challenges, of course, are that you have to thoroughly wet all surfaces. So when you talk about electronics and paper and things of that nature, that's a really tough call. Almost all of the studies show that when you have humans using spray and wipe or wipes in rooms, you're reducing the pathogen load, or the bio load, actually, as it's called, by less than 50%, which obviously isn't very disinfectant, to put it mildly. And there are lots of different chemicals that one can use. Some are more potentially hazardous than others, but this certainly doesn't qualify as whole room disinfection. Now, just as people already use it today, the best uses are for very specific, what they call high touch surfaces, things like door handles, toilet seats, things of that nature, and small, easily identified and reachable surfaces. That's really where spray and wipes get used the most.
So in that, if we get to the next part, there's a difference between fogging and spraying, right?
Oh, there's a big difference between fogging and spraying. And this is actually with electrostatic sprayers, this is one of those things where people tend to get confused. Because an electrostatic sprayer is really just an enhancement over a spray bottle. It's a better way of getting more of the liquid in more places in a particular room. It gets better coverage for less labor, and that's pretty important.
Yeah, certainly.
Advantages are, once again, because it is just an enhanced spray bottle, you still have to thoroughly wet all the surfaces. If the contact time for a disinfectant is 5 minutes, you have to make sure you spray enough to keep all those surfaces wet for 5 minutes. And electronics and paperwork, once again, are really the issue here. Here, because you're creating a bit of an aerosol, your staff exposure to those chemicals goes up. There are some chemicals that in theory don't require full PPE. Most of those are not very effective disinfectants. But I think we all need to think about how our employees feel if they're walking around inhaling electrically charged chemicals. It's still relatively labor intensive because you have to remember where
That's
they've
right.
been and where you're going. And as a result, it's seldom used to do real room disinfection.
Yeah.
But to underline the point, it's not a fogger. We'll get to that in a bit. And we tend to think of this as being lower risk surfaces, but it's really where you need to be able to disinfect or sanitize a room quite quickly. And large open spaces and common areas that can't be readily isolated from others are a good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, most of those chemicals require that you not have people in those large and open spaces, but those rules aren't always followed.
Sure. So there's another process, the UV light's another one that we've seen, and there's areas where it does work well, but let's talk about that too, because that is a significant difference with what we're talking about with fogging, right?
That's right. I mean, UV light is good because it's dry. You know, it doesn't wet surfaces. It obviously can be used around electronics, and it sanitizes as opposed to disinfects areas pretty quickly. And I think that's a good thing. The reason that it sanitizes instead of disinfecting is that it misses lots of germs, lots of pathogens in the shadows and ones that are far away from the machine, because these are the laws of physics.
Yep.
It's line of sight, and the power of that light is diminished by the square of its distance. So if something is four feet away instead of 2 feet away, it's getting 1/4 of the energy that the one 2 feet away is. So in a normal room, you've got lots of shadows, you've got lots of distance. And sometimes that causes people to over radiate close items, which causes real material compatibility issues.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these machines are very, very expensive. They're not at this point regulated really by anybody. So they can pretty much, particularly the smaller ones, can pretty much say whatever they want. We, on the other hand, and the other spray products and others are tightly regulated by the EPA. There are only certain things we're allowed to say about our product.
Yep. And I remember I had a meeting with some of the folks at VA before COVID broke, actually, and we were talking about sanitization and using UV, and there was a lot of issues because of the fact that there's a lot of shadows. That was one of the challenges, and making sure that you could get to the the areas. And they also had problems with the equipment. Some of that equipment is very expensive, and the plastics would turn yellow as a result. Those were those are the two reasons I remember.
Yeah. The two most popular systems out there cost about 10 times what the cost of our systems are. So it's a very expensive process, but they do have uses, and it's really where sanitizing a space is really sufficient. You're going to get a much better result with that than you will with spray and wipe, that's for sure.
Mhm.
If your budget isn't really an issue, then you've got an opportunity here. But very often people say you ought to be augmenting UV with some chemical disinfection as well, using sporicides in some of the shadowed areas and things of that nature to try to increase the disinfection rate in that particular space.
Sure. Now, so this is where you live. This is what
That's
Halo
right.
still does, right? You're in the dry fog world, and that to me was weird when we started talking about it. I can't imagine what a dry fog does, but you're going to tell us exactly how it works. So,
That's right.
So how does it work that the surfaces stay dry and it's still spraying stuff out? How does that happen?
Yeah, this is one of those situations where the fogging device itself matters a great deal. And the EPA requires for our registration that we pair a specific disinfectant with a specific fogging technology.
Okay.
Our product, that's really important because what we have to do is create turbulence and evaporation, because the droplets that we create as an aerosol coming out of the nozzle need to get smaller and smaller so that they sort of waft around the room. It's not spraying. You know, you do get this thing that looks like a spray out the nozzle, but in fact, those droplets evaporate very, very quickly. You should not see a line of wetness on the floor or wetness on any particular surface. And it does get essentially everywhere because it creates hydrogen peroxide as the droplets start to evaporate. But it also creates more and more concentrated droplets as the water gets evaporated out of those droplets as well. So it gets essentially everywhere, not just horizontal surfaces on the top, but underneath and all. The testing that you have to go through to get the registration is incredibly complex.
I imagine so.
And incredibly expensive, by the way. But we really are allowed by the EPA to say that we disinfect all surfaces, nooks and crannies, and we fill the air. And recent testing has shown that when we fill the air, we have very, very, very high kill rates of viruses and certain kinds of bacteria. Now, we can't make those as actual claims because the EPA doesn't yet have a protocol for testing aerosols in the air. But we're working with the state of Delaware now to do that. And hopefully we'll be working with the EPA on those kinds of things as well. These systems are very, very simple to use. They are very safe around electronics, again, because they're dry. And as I said before, the process is repeatable. You know, when you go into any room and fog, that the entire room has been thoroughly disinfected.
Yep.
Now, it's difficult to talk about moderate cost of acquisition because we are moderate in many respects. We're higher than most, but not all, electrostatic spray systems. We're cheaper than all the UV systems. So we're sort of in the middle there. Some of our competitors in this particular space are 5 times as expensive as we are. We tend to be what we call the most effective and most affordable, because there's no one that can make claims of better disinfection than we can from kill rates and things of that nature. You do, however, have to isolate a space for some period of time. So it takes a while to allow people to get back into that room. So you have to close HVAC vents and things of that nature. We've got tools to help you do that very quickly. Setting up a room takes about 5 minutes. But those really are the disadvantages for us.
Now, we're talking about, we'll talk about the ideal uses now. And obviously you mentioned it earlier, electronics and paper. Two of the folks, each one of those were mentioned as what is the most important thing that you'd like to address. And that's it right here. And I think we've all experienced somebody that sprayed something that shouldn't have gotten sprayed, or sat down on a sofa that had been recently done with one of the guns. Anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to distract you.
Well, our systems are used really in two ways. And in hospitals, when we started out, they were using it principally for isolation rooms in places where they knew they had an infectious disease problem. For what is called terminal disinfection, at the end of a patient's stay, they would fog all those rooms to try to make them as safe as possible for the next patient in that particular room, and for the staff and others. And to this day, we still see our use primarily where people believe there's a real issue. But it's also then used, once you have the equipment, it's very cheap to then go into other spaces and on a preventative basis, just sort of go through a deep cleaning / disinfection in those other spaces. So hospitals do normal patient rooms, for instance, and transit vehicles are done, whether something has happened or not.
Yep. So what we're going to look at next, this is actually a video of the system working. So you have the fogger that's filling the room, and there's a couple of things I want to take note of. You do have the drawers open and things like that, right?
That's right. And we always just recommend that as a way to set up the room. Frankly, it's not all that necessary. We have what are called chemical indicator strips that one can put around a room or in drawers, and they turn black if sufficient amounts of hydrogen peroxide have hit them. So it's not the same as testing with biological indicators, but at least lets you know that the vapor and mist has gotten everywhere.
Yep. And I'm going to share this. I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, as you can see, it gets pretty misty in there.
It gets pretty misty in there. And like you said, you have to not be in the room for a bit.
That's correct.
And
the fogging itself only takes, a room like this was probably 8 minutes or something of that nature. But then you have to wait a while to let the hydrogen peroxide that's in the air now break down into what it normally breaks down to, which is oxygen and water.
Yep.
And you have to do that for long enough before people can re-enter.
Right. So I'm going to put this poll up real quick to show you employee confidence, safety, disinfection actually works, so that you can see those, because we're going to get into the top one there, which is restoring confidence in being able to go back to work, or employees that desire to be there. And this is in all those spaces that you would normally find in an office space, right? So this is what we're talking about with that. But you don't just work there. You're also talking about working in corrections with first responders and things like that. I think that's really, really cool. I never thought of that you could just take something and then take care of everything in an ambulance or in a vehicle.
Yeah, we did a lot of work with first responders of lots of different kinds in the past year, military, civilian. We sent units to Bagram in Iraq. So we've got a lot of experience in lots of different ways now. And last year, as you can imagine, really changed the acceptance of our product in new markets. So
sure,
that was the one nice thing about last year, was we were able to help a lot of people.
Yeah. And healthcare,
right?
Obviously,
Where we started,
and in transportation, this goes to your mass transit pieces. So you can just stick it in the middle of the train and let it rip.
That's right. We're being used today in a couple of the biggest transit systems in the U.S., both for buses and subway cars and light rail and things of that nature. And that's actually a business that continues to expand.
Yeah, I can imagine so. And you mentioned this earlier, that just by gauging your effectiveness, it goes to what's the hardest to kill. And what did you mention earlier? Is it spores?
That's right. From a healthcare perspective, the spores you care most about are Clostridium or I can't even say it.
Just read the word.
They just changed the name, and it's tough. But anyway, C. diff.
I can tell you, I'm not saying C. diff. I can say, I can't say the other one.
Right. C. diff is a healthcare acquired infection that kills something less than 30,000 people a year. So it is the most deadly of all of them, save things like COVID and others that one can get in hospital settings now. But the spore, because of the way it's protected, is the most resistant to disinfectants. As you go to the left on this, it gets relatively easier and easier to kill. So the fact that we can kill spores told the EPA, for instance, that we can certainly kill envelope viruses.
Right.
Left. SARS-CoV-2 virus is one of those. So those are relatively easy to kill. The spores, on the other hand, are very, very hard. But this continuum here shows that if you can kill spores, you likely can kill everything to the left.
Very cool. And SARS-CoV-2, just to confuse everybody, that is where COVID-19 lives, in SARS-CoV-2, right? Is that how that
That's
is?
exactly right.
Just want to make sure we're not addressing the fact it does do that and a whole lot more, right? So if you can kill
That's
the
correct.
spores, you can kill all the rest of the stuff. That's the idea. And you mentioned this, that it kills 99.999, that's 6, right? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's 6 nines, yeah.
I always have to mentally count when I'm trying to do 99.99%. I was afraid I'm going to miss one. But this was very much part of the EPA's testing process that we had to follow.
Sure.
So we had, in this room, all over the place, under counters and everything, 184 different samples of pathogens. And we had to kill those 3 times using different ages of disinfectants and things of that nature. But we had to kill them all. And that 6 log kill, as it's called, is essentially the highest kill rate you can claim. They don't allow you to say 100%. So,
or 7 nines, apparently.
that's correct. Some people try to say both of those things, but they're not actually sticking with the rules. So,
People breaking rules? No, no way. Can't imagine that. All right. So, and you mentioned this, it's not just about COVID, it's about other pathogens and other things that are dangerous to us to be able to help clear those up. As you mentioned earlier, COVID-19's in the SARS-CoV-2 world. Don't ask me how
That's
they
right.
name these things. I'm not going to try that either. But yeah, so I think it's real important to know that it isn't just one thing. You address multiple things. And you mentioned,
and if I may just add, we've had a number of emerging pathogens over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
sure,
The C. auris happens to be a fungus that is growing in importance in the United States, and I would imagine overseas as well.
that's this one here, right?
Very, very hard to kill.
Yep.
So the EPA allows us to say that we can treat that because of the fact that we can kill spores. But this is sort of in the same, it's not in the same family of organism, it's in the same difficulty.
Sure. So let's talk, just reiterating for future pathogens, you mentioned 6 log, that's what those 6 nines are, right? 6 log?
Yep,
That's what that
exactly.
means.
Yep.
Against C. diff and the rest of the germs that you have here. And the biggest part is it's EPA registered for
That's
whole
correct.
room disinfection.
And by the way, the -6 says that this registration is in fact our 6th one in our history. So it wasn't
Oh, is that what it is? You're talking
Yeah.
about the number on the registration?
on the end there, the dash.
So 6 times you went through that?
For different kinds of products, yes.
Yeah.
The 5% hydrogen peroxide is important because it's a non-hazardous material. You know, the stuff that you buy in a pharmacy is 3% hydrogen peroxide. It gets hazardous when you come up to 8% and above. So 5% is fine. We can ship it by air. We can do anything.
Wow, fair.
Ionic silver in it, very, very small amounts, but that gives us a different way to kill pathogens of different kinds. And that you've seen the larger list of what we can claim to kill, but those are the key hospital ones.
And I think the most important thing is it matters everywhere, not just one place, right?
That's correct.
And
Yeah,
it's going to change.
People have recognized that this pandemic at least has raised everyone's level of attention to what's going on in the environments for themselves, for their employees, for their families. And by the way, you asked before about housing, residential areas. We do not sell to consumers. That is not the process. There are service companies that supply services to consumers, but we do not sell to them.
And do you actually you sell the products and somebody else does the work, right?
Correct.
Right.
We have a number of customers that are service companies
Yep.
that are providing the disinfection services to other entities. Yeah.
So if they need the service done, you can make recommendations, but on who but
Right.
So we do want to get folks out of here in just a minute, and we will do it. We got a couple questions here that I want to get to, and while we're waiting on that, tell us when if you expect a disinfection requirement immediately, if it's something urgent, make sure you click that so that folks can jump on this and help you out, get to where you want to go. And as I mentioned, participation is very easy. It's painless. So how much, Mario says, how much square footage does one fogger applicate? Great question. I think it's actually cubic footage when you get there, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's cubic feet that we have to cover because we have to put a certain amount of chemical of halo mist into the air per cubic foot. And one of our machines can handle up to about 10,000 cubic feet, but you can run more than one at the same time. So for larger spaces, we have ways to deal with rooms that are larger than that. We've done for the VA in San Diego, our systems were used for a space that was 135,000, I think it was, cubic feet, a huge space.
That's big.
Ended up getting multiple foggers to essentially fog that entire area. It was very successful, but that was a lot of work.
Fantastic. So I think that helps a little bit, Mario. And if anybody else has anything else they want to pop in here, you can. We have one. Let's see what this one says. Do you provide the training for the instruments, and in what medium would it be in person, online? Great question, Jake. Thank you, sir.
We have historically we have done training live, in person on site.
Right.
And we're starting to do that again where it's required, but we can also do videos and Zoom calls and things of that nature. So we've got a multitude of ways of dealing with that.
Fantastic. That's good. Appreciate that. I've scoured the web. What's the startup cost to use the Halo system? Bryce, that comes from Bryce.
Right. By the time you get all the ancillary equipment and things of that nature, the vent covers to close HVAC vents and things of that nature, you're generally talking in the sort of $12,000 to $15,000 range for the equipment itself and for a small amount of disinfectant. The machines start under 10,000, but and by the way, the whole transit system is now changing because we built a version of the fogger that has exactly the same performance characteristics, but it doesn't require electricity to run. And it's designed for trains and buses and those sorts of things. That's a very different pricing model.
And guess what Bryce? Guess what Bryce says about your answer? Not bad, in caps. Thanks for being up front. You're welcome, Bryce. That's why we're here. Try to be up front anyway. How
Well,
much
you'll
time?
find that's the way we are. So
You get you see what you get what you see, right? That's good. How much time lapse following treatment of a room before people can re-enter?
it really depends on.
I knew that was going to be the lawyer answer was coming out. And it depends.
That really depends on the size of the room. But when we think about hospital rooms and places like that, we tend to think about the fogging time plus 90 minutes to 2 hours or something of that nature, which is why in most hospitals, for instance, it's used principally for places where they know they've got a problem, because then it's well worth any delay to protect the patient.
Isn't that the truth? That is true. All right, let's see. Q&A we did. I did that one live. Done. All right. So I think that answers it. And there were a couple of questions. So we addressed the situation for paper. We addressed the situation for electronics. I'm going to pause this for a second and go back to those original slides and see if there's anything in there that looks like we want to hit that we didn't answer already. And I'm going to share that again if we can. So the process is clear. Hopefully it was clear. Hopefully, Michelle, you learned something new. It was
Short and to the point, I'm not sure.
We're close. We're close, Edwin. Give us a little break. All right. And we get so helpful for our room disinfection not to be too expensive. So I guess it depends, right? As well. And then let's go to the next slide, and that is cost for equipment interior. We did that. Oh, delivery times. We didn't answer that one.
At this point, we've fixed all of our supply chain issues. We have things in stock.
Fantastic. Adverse effect on electronic, got it. Paper, got it. VA approved, got it. Purchase method and cost. The method for purchase, tell you what, we're going to talk about that right now. And residential we got. And the question about proper function HVAC systems. Maybe we want to talk, Douglas, we might take that one offline, only because if we figure out what you're actually up against, probably, right?
Yeah, I think so. And it depends on whether you're just talking about, for instance, the virus that causes COVID-19 or talking about other pathogens as well.
Right.
So
the purchase, now, when I said earlier, there's no obligation to purchase from any vendor, including HaloSil. That is true. But if you want to, you can, because the information's right here. You guys have a GSA contract, so they can purchase right now if they want to. And I think probably you accept credit cards too, I would think, right, David?
we do indeed.
And so but you don't do the installation of it. But the training part, you can help with as well. Let's ask. There's a couple more questions here. Does Dry
I'm
Fog?
sorry.
Go ahead.
Wait, Dave, sorry. There is no real installation per se, because we're shipping things that are mobile. So it's not as if we're trying to build things into the facility.
Gotcha. Here's a great question from Lee. Does dry fogging affect fire alarm controls in a building? Great question.
And the answer is yes, but it depends.
Or nobody.
One of the things, we have vent covers, we also have smoke alarm covers that use extendable poles so you don't have to climb ladders and things of that nature. There are certain fire alarm systems that look for heat, and that's what sets them off. We have no problem with those. The ones that look for smoke, they tend to think that the fog, the mist, is smoke, and they can go off. So we say, cover the fire alarm in the rooms that you're fogging, but it's only the rooms that you're actually fogging at that time.
Gotcha. Fantastic. And Vicky's asking, what happens to N95 masks? Great question as well, Vicky. So I'm assuming that if the masks are in the room when it's getting fogged.
I mean, if they're just lying around, I'm not going to comment on that because that gets us into sort of a tricky area.
Yeah.
You know that that Michigan State, the hospitals there got a emergency authorization from the FDA to use our products to recycle, so to speak, their N95s last year. Had a room where they were hanging up properly, they would fog, and they demonstrated that that was sufficient to allow those masks to be used again. But the EPA doesn't say that, the FDA said that.
So it really depends on what it's being used for, right? But that's a pretty good answer. Bryce has one more question. Promises, Bryce. Can the Halo be used with bio product or only Halo line of products? Good question.
The only,
Bio-
yeah,
Go ahead.
the answer is only with the Halo Mist product. And that's in large part because the EPA registers those two as a pair. So
Oh,
the EPA's registration says you can make all these great kill claims if you use just these two things. They're, by the way, likely to do the same thing with electrostatic sprayers. We'll see. But as they think about how to do those, they're worried about ways that different sprayers work, and they might not work as effectively with one disinfectant as the other. We were the first ones out of that.
gotcha. And Lee has her, he or she, I don't know which one. Lee, you there? I asked to unmute because you had your hand up. So I want to make sure I get you.
Yeah, I'm here. I was asking the same question
Oh,
that I wrote the answer for.
there you go. So dry fog, that was a fire alarm one, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. Who are you with? Who are you with, Lee? I love the picture.
My company is LR Associates LLC. I'm the CEO.
Oh, fantastic. And who is that Donald Duck guy?
That's my grandson.
That is fantastic. I love it. That is awesome. Thank you so much, Lee, for being here and for participating. And if anybody else has any questions, we will be glad to answer those. But in the meantime, you will get a recap email. You'll have one that comes today, which will have the video that you see will look kind of just like you just saw, with a link to the video as well as all of the presentation materials that we discussed. And you'll get another one next week. That'll be a more finished product if you want that, and you can view that as many times as you want. That is all part of this. And I just want to say thank you for being here. We went over a little bit because of questions, but we always love the back and forth, right, David?
Absolutely. And I just want to thank all of you as well, and to encourage you to be safe.
That is the whole idea. So again, David, great work. Appreciate that. A lot of more scientific information than I've had since school. So we appreciate the overdose of that. But if you want to get to David, here's his information right here. If you need to reach us at GovBrief, feel free. If you want to ask any questions directly, info@halosil.com, because nobody at GovBrief is going to know anything about how this stuff works. These are the guys that do it. Thank you for doing what you're doing and helping folks, especially in the VA. We do appreciate it. And Elvis says, thank you. You're welcome. So any parting comments there, David?
As I said before, just be safe. We all need to do that.
That's right. Well, we appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Michael,
Yep.
You're welcome. Very informative, he says. So we appreciate you guys being here. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.